Picture the most expensive street in the history of the human race. Now line it with palaces, actual palaces, marble and limestone and carved oak, 60 rooms, 70 rooms, houses with their own ballrooms and their own chapels and their own machinery for making ice in August. Add an army of servants living under the roofs, a traffic jam of carriages with crests painted on the doors, and dinner parties where the flowers alone cost more than a schoolteacher earned in a year. That's Fifth Avenue, New York, in its golden age, the richest street on earth. And here is the part nobody tells you. Almost none of it survived. The palaces are gone, not faded, not converted, not preserved behind velvet ropes. Gone, knocked down, carted away as rubble. Most of them within 40 years of the day they were finished. A man could set the cornerstone of a mansion as a boy and watch the wreckers eat it before he was old. We're going back there tonight, not to visit one party or one morning. We've done that in this house of stories before. Tonight we're doing something different. We're going to follow one house through its whole life, birth to death. From the first trowel of mortar in 1882 to the last swing of the Wreckers' Ball in 1926. 44 years, a human might call that half a life. On Fifth Avenue, it turned out to be forever. One honest thing before we start, because you know I always tell you which is which. The house we're entering tonight is a composite. There was no single mansion at the corner I'll describe, no family by the name I'll give them. Call them the Wardwells, because we have to call them something. And the real families of that street have living descendants and lawyers. But everything that happens to this house happened, documented and dated, to the real houses of Fifth Avenue. The costs, the wages, the customs, the funerals in drawing rooms, the Red Cross sewing machines in ballrooms, the auctions, the wreckers. The dates are real, the prices are real, the street is real, and the eyes I'll lend you inside it. A mason's boy, a footman, a cook, a volunteer, a watchman, a wrecker. Those are borrowed eyes, composite people, stitched honestly from the records of the thousands who really did stand where they'll stand. I'll always tell you where the documents end and the imagining begins. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I still can't tell whether anyone actually sleeps to them, or whether you're all just weirdos who find it soothing to hear exactly what it costs to heat a ballroom that nobody has danced in for 9 years. Either way, subscribe if you feel like it. Get comfortable. Here we go. The smell of wet lime is the first thing, not the sight of the avenue, not the cold. The smell, sharp and mineral and slightly burnt, rising off the mortar tub in front of you, because you've been turning that mortar with a hoe since before the sky turned grey, and your arm stopped belonging to you somewhere around the 100th stroke. It is a little past 5 in the morning, in April of 1882, and you're standing in a hole in the ground on the east side of Fifth Avenue, a few steps above 62nd Street, mixing the mud that will hold up a palace. Your name is Tommy Doyle. You're 15 years old. You're a mason's boy. A tender, the men call it, because you tend the bricklayers and stonemasons the way a stable boy tends horses. You carry, you mix, you fetch, you keep your mouth shut. Your hands are cracked at every knuckle, because lime mortar eats skin, dries it, splits it, and no amount of tallow rubbed in at night ever quite catches up. There's a split at the base of your right thumb that has been open since February. You've stopped noticing it except when the lime finds it. The lime is finding it now. Around you, in the pit, the footings are going in. Great rough blocks of stone, each one heavier than a piano, lowered on chain falls by men who communicate in grunts and single syllables. because a wrong word at the wrong moment means a crushed hand, and everyone here has seen a crushed hand. Last month, on the job 2 blocks south, a chain slipped and a man from Cork lost 3 fingers. He was back on the site 9 days later, carrying water with the hand he had left, because carrying water pays 90 cents a day, and his rent did not go down out of sympathy. That's the arithmetic of this street, and you might as well learn it now at the bottom of the hole before we ever see a chandelier. The house that will stand on top of these footings has been priced, in the contract sitting in a lawyer's office downtown, at $1,900,000. That's the house alone. Not the land, not the furniture, not the paintings that will be shipped from Europe in crates the size of cottages. You earn, as a mason's boy, $1.10 a day. The skilled men above you, the bricklayers and stonemasons whose mortar you mix, earn $3.50. Princely money, union money, the best wages a workingman can touch in this city. Do the sum the way you sometimes do it in your head, stirring the tub. At labourers' wages, $1.10 a day, 6 days a week, no sickness, no winter layoffs, spending nothing. Nothing on rent, nothing on bread. A man would need over 5,000 years to earn this house. Start him mixing mortar when the pyramids were new, and he'd just about have it paid off this morning. And when I say a palace, I need you to understand what that means on Fifth Avenue in 1882. This isn't a big house. This is a race. The whole avenue, from the 30s up past the park, has gone insane in the space of a few years. The old money built brownstones, dour, chocolate-coloured, respectable rows of them, every one alike, because being alike was the point. Then the new money arrived, railroad money, silver money, dry goods money, and the new money did not want to be alike. This very winter, down at 51st Street, a railroad family has just finished a triple palace of brown stone that runs a full block front and reportedly cost close to $2 million before the furniture went in. Down at 34th Street stands the one that started the madness, a department store millionaire's mansion of white marble, finished back in 1869, so grand that people simply call it the Marble Palace. Every year now, another one goes up, each bigger than the last, each trying to make the last one look timid. The families are keeping score. The newspapers are keeping score. Even you, in your hole, are keeping score, because the men talk, and the men know to the dollar what every job on the avenue is worth. Your house. You've already started calling it that, silently. Your house. The way every man on a job does. Your house will have 42 rooms. It will have a front of Indiana limestone 75 feet along the avenue, because brownstone has gone out and pale stone is the new fashion. It will have, the foreman says, a hall lined in cairn stone, a soft honey-coloured limestone that comes across the ocean from Normandy, from quarries near a town the men pronounce corn, stone so gentle under the chisel that carvers love it the way bakers love good dough. It will have an English architect, an actual Englishman, brought across the Atlantic, a man who has built country houses for lords, because the family paying for all this wants nobody to mistake them for people who hired somebody local. The Englishman comes to the site twice a week in a grey coat, walks the mud in polished boots with wooden pattens strapped under them, and speaks only to the general foreman in a voice like cold tea. He has never once looked at you. You are 15 and covered in lime, and to him you're approximately as visible as the wheelbarrows. You don't resent it exactly. That's the thing people get wrong about this street later looking back. Down in the hole, there is no resentment to spare. There is the tub and the hod and the ache between your shoulder blades, and the foreman's voice, and the next load, and the next. Resentment is a luxury, and you already know the first rule of this avenue. Every luxury belongs to somebody else. The man teaching you your trade is a stonemason named Bayon, 50-some years old, a face like a walnut, forearms so hard that when he flexes them the old scars go white. He came over from Galway before the war, helped build churches, banks, reservoirs. His hands can read stone the way a doctor reads a pulse. He lays 2 fingers on a block, taps it with his knuckle, and knows if there's a flaw hidden in the middle of it, a seam that will open in 10 winters. The other men bring him stones the way children bring questions. You're slow, Bayon says without looking at you as you swing another hod up onto your shoulder. You're not slow. He says this every morning. You've learned not to argue. You've learned that it is a kind of greeting, and that the day he stops saying it will be the day he has given up on you. This morning is not an ordinary morning, and everyone in the pit knows it. This morning at 7, before the traffic thickens on the avenue they are setting the cornerstone, there is a ceremony to it, even on a private house, even with no crowd. The custom is old, older than this city, older than the language the orders are shouted in. The first true stone at the corner of a building, the stone from which every other stone is measured, goes down with a blessing and very often with an offering. Coins, a newspaper, sometimes a Bible, sometimes a bottle. Things sealed into the building's foot so that the building will remember the day it was born. At 6:30, a carriage stops at the plank fence on the avenue side, and the owner comes down into the mud on a ramp of scaffold boards laid for the occasion. Mr. Wardwell. You've seen him twice before, always at a distance, always in a black coat that fits him the way armour fits a knight, which is to say, it was built for him by hands as skilled as Bayon's, and he wears it without thinking about it, which is the whole point of such a coat. He is perhaps 45. He made his money in ways you don't fully understand. Railroads into copper, into banking, the men say. Money that breeds money. And he has a habit you will remember for the rest of your life. He looks at things for a long time before he speaks. He stands now at the edge of the footing trench and looks at the cornerstone dressed and squared and hanging in its chain sling for what feels like a full minute. Then he takes something from his waistcoat pocket and holds it out. Not to the foreman, not to the Englishman in the grey coat, who's appeared at his shoulder like a second shadow. He holds it out over the trench, to whichever pair of hands is nearest. The nearest hands are yours. Set that under it, Mr. Wardwell says. Fair in the middle. I'm told it's the custom. It is a silver dollar, new that year, 1882, bright as a fish. Liberty's head on the one side, the eagle on the other. A dollar is most of a day's pay, and it lies in your cracked palm with a cold, particular weight, and for one lunatic half-second you think about the things a dollar buys. And then you feel Bayon's eyes on the back of your neck, and the thought dies the death it deserves. You kneel on the footing stone. The mortar bed has been spread an inch thick, grey-brown, glistening. You press the coin down into the middle of it, eagle up, and the mortar rises around its rim like dough around a thumbprint and holds it. Good, says Mr. Wardwell. The chains take the strain. The cornerstone comes down slow, 1.5 tons of squared limestone, easing toward your hands. You steady its face. Bayon steadies the other side. The foreman calls the inches. 4, 3, 2, and then the great block settles onto the bed with a sound you feel in your teeth rather than hear, a deep wet crunch, and the mortar squeezes out along the joints in fat grey worms, and the coin is gone, sealed, under 1.5 tons of stone, under what will be 30 more feet of stone on top of that, under the whole coming palace. Bian strikes the joints clean with his trowel, one long practised draw of the blade for each edge, and straightens up, and looks at the stone, and says the only ceremonial words anyone is going to say. "Well, that's her born." Mr. Wardwell looks at the stone a moment longer. Then he climbs back up the scaffold boards, and the carriage takes him away down the avenue, and the foreman shouts, and the day begins in earnest, and you go back to the tub, and the lime finds the split in your thumb again. But all morning, swinging the hod, you keep thinking about it. The dollar. Your thumbprint is in the mortar under that stone. Somewhere under the palace forever, there's a coin that touched your hand last. Forever. Hold on to that word, because this whole story is about what that word turned out to mean on Fifth Avenue. Forever, on this street, is going to be 44 years. The house takes 2.5 years to build, and you are there for all of it, because Bayan keeps you, and being kept by Bayan is the best thing that has happened to you in your working life. You learn the house from the inside of its bones outward, which is a way of knowing a building that no one who merely lives in it will ever match. You know which footing stone has the coin under it. You know where the iron beams run, because this palace, for all its old world stone, has a modern steel and iron skeleton in places, floor beams that came across on flat cars from Pennsylvania, and the men who rivet them sing filthy songs in 3 languages. You know the well of the main staircase before the marble treads arrive, when it is just a raw shaft of brick with daylight falling down through it, and you know the second staircase too, the one the family will never use, the narrow one buried in the back of the house, winding from the sub-basement to the attics, the servants' stair. And you know something about that stair that almost nobody else will ever know, and I want you to keep it, because it matters later. In the spring of 1884, when the carpenters are framing the servants' stair, it's a wooden stair, oak treads on a steel carriage, tucked inside a brick shaft barely 3 feet wide. One flight comes out wrong. The flight rising from the kitchen level to the pantry floor. Somewhere between the architect's drawing and the carpenter's saw, an inch went missing, and rather than tear the flight out, the carpenter splits the error across the treads and swallows most of it in one place, the 7th step. The 7th step from the bottom is a shade shallower than all its brothers. Not enough to condemn, not enough to redo, not with the Englishmen down their necks about the schedule. Just enough that a foot climbing in the dark, a foot that has learned the rhythm of the stair, will catch its toe there. The carpenter runs his thumb along the nosing of that 7th tread and says to no one in particular, "That one'll teach them," and moves on. Remember the 7th step. Every human being who ever works in this house is going to be introduced to it exactly once. You watch the walls rise through the seasons, and the seasons on a building site are not like other seasons. Summer of 82, the brick shell going up, the pit like a kiln, men strip into their undershirts and the foreman pretending not to see, water boys running the planks with dippers, and the smell, hot brick dust, sweat, the ammonia reek of the horse ramp, tar kettles for the roofing farther down the block. Winter of 82 into 83, the walls shrouded in canvas and the mortar mixed with hot water so it won't freeze before it sets. Salamander stoves glowing in the shell of the ballroom, and your fingers so dead by evening that you unlace your boots with your teeth. There are weeks in January when the frost wins and the work stops entirely, and stopped work means stopped wages. Nobody pays a labourer to watch snowfall, so you shovel coal down in the 40s for those weeks and come back when the mortar will set again. Nobody at your level is ever more than a few silent weeks from hunger. That is not a figure of speech. That is the budget. And all the while, the finished palace floats above the mud, invisible, existing only in the rolls of drawings under the Englishman's arm and in the crates that have begun to arrive. Because the crates, Tommy, the crates are an education all by themselves. The canstone comes first, in the autumn of '83. Blocks of it, honey pale, packed in straw like enormous eggs, stevedored up from the docks on drays whose teamsters curse the whole width of the avenue. French carvers come with it, or at least carvers who have worked in France. Small, precise men who set up a shed on the site and fill it with the sweetest sound on the job, the tick, tick, tick of mallet on chisel, hour on hour, as acanthus leaves and ribbons and the heads of lions come crawling up out of the stone. You take to standing at the shed door at the dinner hour, eating your bread, watching. One of the carvers, seeing you there 3 days running, hands you a broken chisel and a scrap block and says, "Spoil that." And you do, gloriously, and the carvers laugh, and after that they let you sweep the shed for the privilege of watching. The dust of cornerstone is soft as flour and smells faintly sweet, like a cellar where apples have been stored. You will smell it again once 42 years from now, and it will stop you in the street. Then the marble for the hall floor from Italy. Then mahogany from Honduras and oak from England. Quarter sawn, the grain flashing like watered silk, and a mantelpiece of carved French walnut, said in the papers to have come out of an actual chateau, bought whole and shipped. A fireplace that is 200 years old before the house around it is one. Then, in the summer of 1884, a crate unlike the others, 12 feet on a side, built like a fortress, marked with stenciled French and the name of a maker on the Rue de Paradis in Paris. Inside, packed in wood wool, in hundreds of numbered linen bags, a chandelier. The chandelier, the one for the ballroom, gilt bronze and rock crystal, 1,140 cut pieces by the packing list, 48 gas branches, a quarter of a ton hanging weight. It takes 4 men 2 weeks, working from a scaffold tower under the ballroom's new ceiling, to assemble it, hanging each numbered drop on its numbered hook, while a 5th man on the floor reads the list aloud like a priest reading a litany. When it is done, and the scaffold comes down, and the gas is lit for the first time to test it, this is a November evening, nearly dark, the parquet still under sawdust. Every man on the job finds a reason to walk through the ballroom. You go too. You stand under it in your lime-stiff jacket among the other silent workmen and look up into a frozen explosion of light. 1,140 points of fire, and nobody says anything at all, because what is there to say? You built a sky for other people's evenings. You will never dance under it. Both of those things are simply true, and you hold them both and go home. The locksmith comes that same autumn, a German with a leather roll of tools who fits the great front doors, oak, iron-studded, 11 feet tall, with a lock the size of a family Bible. You happen to be carrying scaffold boards through the hall when he cuts the final key, the master for the front door, filing it by hand, trying it, filing again, the brass shavings curling away bright as hair. The finished key as heavy as a spoon, long as your hand, with the maker's mark stamped at the ball. The German holds it up to the light, sights along it, and says something in German with great satisfaction, and the Englishman's clerk writes in a ledger, Front entrance, master, 1. 1 key to begin with for the biggest door on the block. Keys, you will learn, are a map of trust. Follow this one. It has a long journey ahead of it, and it outlives almost everything in this story. Here's a thing you should understand about what's around this palace while it rises, because people imagine Fifth Avenue springing up complete, like a stage set. It didn't. In 1882, above the park's southern end, the city is still ragged. From the top of the scaffold, and this is the part of the job you love and would confess to no one, the climbing, you can see the whole strange seam of it. Look south, the avenue running down in a canyon of brownstone toward the spires of the new cathedral at 50th Street, its towers still growing, and beyond that the thickening haze of the real city, chimney smoke and harbour light. Look west, the park, bare-branched or green by season, a groomed wilderness with sheep in it, actual sheep. Look north and east, goats, shanties with tin roofs held down by stones, cabbage gardens, squatters' pigs, rock outcrops waiting for the blasting crews, whole blocks that are nothing but mud and survey stakes. The palace is a frontier fort. The millionaires are homesteading in limestone. From 60 feet up one October evening, with the lamp starting to prick on down the avenue and the shanty fires starting to prick on uptown, you watch a heron go over, headed for the park water, and Bian comes up the ladder and stands beside you, catching his wind, and looks at the whole spread of it with you, the palaces and the goats. Take a look, he says. You'll not see it like this again. A city's like mortar. It only stays soft the once. Then he clouts you on the shoulder and tells you the boards won't walk up the ladder themselves. The house is finished in the autumn of 1884. There is no ceremony for the workmen at the end. There never is. 1 week the site is 100 men. Then it is 60, then 20. Then a handful of finishers and polishers padding around in felt slippers so their boots won't mark the floors. And then one Tuesday, you and Bahan load the last of the tools onto a wagon, and the fence comes down. And that is that. You stand on the sidewalk, a finished sidewalk now, blue stone swept, and look up at it. 75 feet of pale limestone, 4 stories and attics, the carved lions over the door snarling down the avenue, glass flashing, area railings black and gleaming. It looks as if it has always been there and always will be. That is precisely what it was built to look like. Illusion is a building material, and it was bought and paid for like the rest. Bayan settles his cap. Well, he says, there's men'll tell you we build for the ages. We don't. We build for the owners, the ages. He spits comfortably. Make their own arrangements. You don't understand him yet. You're 17. You will understand him completely on a summer morning 42 years from now, and you'll hear the words again as clear as this, over the sound of a steam crane. But that comes at the end, and this is still the beginning, because now the vans arrive. The furniture, the crates from Paris and London, the paintings, the plate. And then, on an evening in November 1884, lamps go on behind the tall windows, floor after floor, and Fifth Avenue as a new palace, inhabited. The family moves in. The mason's boy walks away down the avenue with his tool bag, and the house, sealed, warm, glowing, with a silver dollar in its foot and a flaw in its hidden stair, begins its life. Now we change our eyes. That's the bargain we made at the start. The house is the protagonist tonight, and we enter each of its ages through whoever happens to be standing inside. So let the mason's boy go, though not, I promise you, for good, and step through the servant's door, down the area steps, under the sidewalk, into the basement, into the year 1885. You have a new name now, and a new set of hands. They call you James, and it may not even be your name. That's the first thing to understand about service in a great house. Footmen are sometimes renamed like dogs, because the mistress of one house liked her footmen to be James and Charles, and the mistress of this one inherited the habit with the silver. You're 20 years old, second footman, 5 feet 11, and yes, you are hired partly by the inch. Footmen are matched like carriage horses, and tall ones cost more. A matched pair of 6-foot footmen is a display of wealth as deliberate as the chandelier. You're paid $30 a month and found meaning fed, housed, and put into livery that costs more than every other garment you have ever owned put together. Your day begins at 6, in an attic room under the roof that you share with the first footman, and it begins the way it will begin for every servant in this house for the next 35 years, on the back stair. The back stair is the house's second skeleton. The family lives in the wide, warm, carpeted body of the house. You live in the narrow bones behind it. Green baize doors, silent hinged, seal one world from the other, and the rule, the great rule, the rule under all the other rules, is that the two worlds must never collide. Work is to be invisible. Fires are laid before the family wakes, rooms are cleaned while they are elsewhere. If you are carrying coals down a corridor and a member of the family appears, you stop and you face the wall, and you become, for the length of their passing, a piece of furniture that breathes. Nobody thinks this is strange. You don't think it's strange. It is simply the mechanism, and you are a part in it, oiled and fitted. And on your first morning, your very first, carrying your box up to the attic behind the first footman, you catch your toe on the 7th step of the kitchen flight and go down on one knee, hard, box and all, and from somewhere above you in the dark of the shaft comes a voice, young, Irish, entirely unsurprised. 7th step. Everyone does it the once. You'll never do it again. That is Bridget. Scullery maid, 16 years old, off the boat from Queenstown 11 months ago, hands already scalded pink to the wrist from other people's dishwater. She's at the bottom of a staff of 23, chef, undercooks, kitchen maids, scullery, butler, 2 footmen, useful man, hall boy, housekeeper, 4 housemaids, 2 laundresses, lady's maid, valet, nurse, coachman, grooms, 23 living souls stacked in the attics and the basement of a house that belongs to 4, Mr. and Mrs. Wardwell, old Mrs. Wardwell the mother, and the child Miss Constance, who is 9. Bridget earns $12 a month. She sends 8 of them home. You will watch her do it the first Sunday of every month, year after year. The same walk to the same bank window, the same money order, the same envelope, licked and smoothed twice with her thumb. $8 a month is 2 passages a year. She's towing her family across the Atlantic behind her, one brother at a time, like a tug hauling barges. Above you both, at the summit of the below-stairs world, stands Mr. Fenwick, the butler. English, of course. The family imported him the way they imported the cornerstone, and for the same reason. He is authentic, and everyone can tell. 45, grey at the temples, a voice that never rises and never needs to. He was in service in a marquess's house in England, and he carries the fact the way an officer carries a decoration, never mentioned, always visible. Mr. Fenwick keeps the wine cellar book, the plate inventory, and the front door key, the great brass key you saw cut, which lives now on a ring at his waist by day and under his pillow by night, and which he polishes, weekly, with rouge and a chamois. though it needs nothing. The key is his office-made metal. When the house sleeps, he walks it top to bottom, trying the shutters, and the last sound of every night in this palace is the same sound. The front door's bolts going home under his hand, 1, 2, and the deep-oiled clunk of that lock turning. Mr. Fenwick's first instruction to you, delivered in the pantry among the mahogany cases of silver, is this: you are furniture that breathes. Be excellent furniture. He watches you absorb it. Something almost warm crosses his face a foot below the surface. It is not an insult, James. A chair does not envy. A chair does not gossip to the newspapers. A chair is never, ever late. Master those 3 things, and you will find that this, a slight motion of the head, taking in the pantry, the house, the avenue, the age, is a life. You will spend 6 years learning how much instruction was folded into that. What does the house need to be alive? This is the part no one on the avenue outside ever sees, so look at it, because you are inside the machine now. The house eats a ton of coal every winter day, anthracite for the furnaces, soft coal for the kitchen ranges, carried by you and the useful man, scuttle by scuttle, up from cellar bins the size of a cottage. 31 fireplaces, gas in every room, and after 1888, when the family modernises, electricity too, run in silk-wrapped wires that the older maids refuse to touch, believing the current leaks, water pumped to tanks in the attic, a hydraulic dumbwaiter, an icebox room that takes 400 pounds of ice a week in summer, flowers twice a week from the florist on Madison, in February, roses forced in Jersey greenhouses, $1.50 a dozen, 2 dozen at a time, while outside the area railings a man is selling apples at a penny apiece and not selling many. The house is a ship under steam. Always, even at 4 in the morning, something is always burning, dripping, cooling, rising, being carried, and the whole engine exists to produce, on its upper decks, one single manufactured good: effortlessness. The family must never see the stoking. Effortlessness is the most expensive thing made in America, and this house makes it around the clock. The mornings alone, below stairs, are a machine within the machine. The fires, the boots, the trays, the brushing, 23 people moving to the minute before the family's first bell. But I've taken you through a Fifth Avenue morning before, in another house on another night, so tonight I'll leave the mornings folded and give you the nights, because it is at night that this house does the thing it was built for. The first great ball is given in February of 1886, and the house prepares for it the way a city prepares for a coronation. 3 days out, the florist's men arrive with ladders and smilax by the barrelful, and the ballroom begins to disappear under green. 2 days out, the caterer's wagons, gilt chairs by the gross. The house owns 12 dozen of its own, little gold-legged chairs with crimson silk seats, stored in racks in the basement like ranked soldiers. And remember those chairs, because strangers are going to handle them roughly at the end of this story. 1 day out, the extra men, hired waiters, hired footmen, a hired chef de partie to help the chef, who has reached the state of white-lipped fury that is, in chefs, the sign of impending greatness. The kitchen for 24 hours smells of stock, burnt sugar, terrapin, and temper, and at 10 o'clock on the night itself you're standing in the front hall in full livery, plush breeches, silk stockings, powder in your hair, which you privately consider ridiculous, and which costs the family a small fortune in violet powder. You're standing at your post at the foot of the great stair holding a silver tray, being furniture, when the chandelier is lit. There is a man whose only job tonight is the chandelier. all 48 gas branches at once, for the first time since the workman's test. It goes up section by section, ring above ring, until the whole quarter-ton of it is burning, 1,140 crystals throwing splinters of fire down the cornerstone walls, and the hall, you know every servant in this house feels it, because you all find excuses to pass the ballroom doors. The hall becomes something that has no business existing on a street where a man sells apples at a penny. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. Both of those things are true at once. You're getting used to holding two true things. It is the principal skill of your position. From 11 until 2, the carriages come. This is what the footman's line exists for, and you will describe it to people for the rest of your life. The avenue outside is a solid double rank of broughams and landaus, coachmen muffled to the eyes. It is 9 degrees. Carriage lamps in a chain of yellow beads stretching down past 61st Street. A police detail keeps the line moving. On the sidewalk, and this is the detail you'll keep, there is a crowd. Ordinary New Yorkers, maybe 200 of them, standing in the frozen dark behind the sawhorses to watch the guests go in. Shop girls with their collars up. Clerks. A man holding a child on his shoulders. All of them silent. All of them watching diamonds walk 12 feet from the curb to the door through a canvas awning with a red carpet down it. Nobody protests. Nobody cheers. Nobody. They just watch, white-breathed. The way people watch fireworks or house fires. 12 feet of carpet, and on either side of it 2 Americas, looking at each other with enormous politeness. Your post is the door of the ballroom, and so you see the whole night the way the chandelier sees it, from the edge, lit, unnoticed. You see 400 people. That is a real number on this avenue. In a few years a society journalist will make it famous. The claim that New York's society proper holds only 400 souls. You see them dance quadrilles and waltzes under the crystal. The women's diamonds so dense that when the dancing pauses the room still glitters, moving like frost forming. You see a United States senator drop a shrimp down a duchess's train and follow it in after with a fork, laughing. You see old Mrs. Wardwell, the mother, hold her receiving position for 3 hours on a bad hip rather than sit, because the woman she is feuding with sat at her own ball, and it was noticed. You see Mr. Wardwell, near midnight, leave his guests, cross to where the cornerstone arch meets the ballroom door frame, a step from your post, and lay his palm flat against the carved stone for a moment, the way a man touches the neck of a horse. He sees you see him. He is not embarrassed. "There's a silver dollar under all this," he says, "down in the footing. Set it there myself, more or less, the morning she was born." A small pause. "Whole thing stands on $1. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Then he goes back to the 400, and you stand at your post with your tray, and the orchestra tunes into the next waltz, and somewhere 5 floors below your feet, in the dark, under 30 tons of stone, the eagle lies face up in the mortar, exactly where your other pair of hands, and the cracked ones, the lime-split ones 3 years ago and a world away, pressed it home. Suppers at 1, terrapin, canvas-back duck, a pyramid of nougat, champagne out of double magnums. What the papers will report tomorrow is the flowers and the diamonds. What you will remember is the leftovers, because at 4 in the morning, when the last carriage has gone and the hired men are paid off at the area door, the chef, sweating, triumphant, imperial, sends up to the servants' hall 2 platters of what came back: duck, galantine, broken meringues. 23 servants eat millionaire's supper standing up, dead on their feet, in their shirt sleeves, and Bridget, who has washed copper since noon yesterday, 17 years old, her forearms marbled red. Bridget eats a spun sugar swan, eats it slowly, wing by wing, with her eyes shut. 60 years later, no, I promised you honesty about what can and can't be known, and Bridget is borrowed eyes, so I'll only say this. Nobody who was ever 17 forgets the taste of the first stolen hour of somebody else's abundance. You know that yourself. You've had that swan in some kitchen of your own. The ball costs, all told, somewhere near $9,000. The flowers $1,000, the supper $3, the music $400, the champagne uncounted. $9,000 is 25 years of your wages. It is gone in 5 hours. You do that arithmetic at your post, in the powder and the plush, with your face perfectly still, because the arithmetic is yours to do and yours to keep. That too is below-stairs property. And here is the strange part, the part you could not explain to the man holding his child up outside the sawhorses. You are proud. The house shone tonight, and you are part of the house. That's the trap and the truth of service, and it holds 23 people in this building alone. At 4:30, Mr. Fenwick walks the ground floor alone, gutters the last candles and locks the great door. 1, 2, clunk. The sound goes up the stairwell through the sleeping house like a heartbeat finishing. The house has done the thing it was built for. It will do it, in season, for 20 years more. But a house's life, like anyone's, is mostly not its ball nights. So before we leave these years, come and see 3 small things. They matter more than the terrapin. The first is a child counting stairs. Miss Constance is 9, 10, 11 in these years, and she is the only member of the family who lives in the whole house, because children in a palace are like cats. Doors mean nothing to them, and the servants conspire in it. The nursery floor is the third. The schoolroom faces the park, and Miss Constance's particular game, every evening of her childhood, is the main staircase. 52 marble steps, bottom hall to nursery landing, and she counts them aloud going up to bed every night in a chanting whisper, 49, 50, 51, 52, and the number always comes out the same, and that is the whole game. And if you think that's a poor game, you have forgotten being 9 in a house too big for you. The stairs always come out to 52. The world holds. You can hear her some evenings from the hall going up ahead of the nurse, whisper counting into the dark, and every servant in earshot smiles into their collar, because 23 people who will never have such a staircase are fond, helplessly fond, of the child who thinks it exists to be counted. One March afternoon in 1886, a Thursday, the nurse is at her tea, rain flogging the park side of the house. Miss Constance takes a steel pen nib from the schoolroom, climbs onto the nursery window seat, and scratches into the soft white paint of the mahogany windowsill. Down in the corner where the shutter folds over it and hides it, 2 letters, ci doit. It takes her most of an hour. She goes over the strokes again and again until they're grooved into the wood itself, grey and definite. Then she folds the shutter back over it, and her heart bangs for a while at the enormity of the crime, and nobody ever notices at all, except that the house has noticed in the way houses do. The sill keeps the letters. Under every repainting, and the nursery is repainted 4 times in the years ahead, the grooves stay, faint as veins under skin, 2 letters in a hidden corner, waiting. There is a person in this story, not born yet, who will find them. And there is a day, exactly 40 years from that rainy Thursday, when those 2 letters will be worth more than everything else in the room. Leave them there. The shutter keeps the secret. That's the second thing planted in this house's body. The coin below, the letters above. The second small thing is a wedding. Constance Wardwell is married in the house in April of 1897 at 20, to a quiet man from Boston with good bones and modest coal money, and the wedding is the house's high water mark. You'll know it for the high water mark later, the way you always know later. Marrying at home is the custom of this world and this decade. The drawing room becomes the chapel. A florist builds an altar of Easter lilies and white lilac against the chateau mantelpiece, and the bride comes down to be married by the same staircase she counted. The staff, all of it, is permitted to gather in the upper hall to watch her go down. This too is custom, the below-stairs gallery, one of the rare sanctioned moments when the two houses inside the house may look at each other openly. You are there, James, first footman now, 31 years old. Bridget is there, kitchen maid risen to undercook, 28 now, 2 brothers landed and a third paid for. Mr. Fenwick is not in the gallery. Mr. Fenwick is at the drawing-room doors on duty because someone must be, and it would not have occurred to him to be anywhere else. And down she comes, the child of the house, in white satin with her grandmother's lace veiling her face, and you hear it. The whole gallery hears it, and not one of you ever tells the family. You hear her under the veil, going down to be married, whisper counting. 49, 50, 51, 52. The number comes out the same. The world holds. Afterward there's a breakfast for 200, and the gilt chairs come up from the basement racks, and the chandelier burns at noon with the curtains drawn, which is the kind of expense that even you, after 12 years in this house, still silently converts. Daylight, purchased and thrown away, in the middle of the day. Old Mrs. Wardwell, wintering now in her rooms on the second floor, is carried down in a chair by you and the second footman to see the couple toasted, and grips your forearm on the last step with a hand like a bird's foot and says, "Not really to you. This house does a wedding very well. Airy. As if the house had done it. Well, hadn't it? 23 pairs of hands, 3 days without proper sleep, and every one of you in the gallery watching her go down felt the same wing beat of ownership. Our girl, our stare, our day. The trap and the truth again. Both. Constance and her Bostonian settle 4 blocks south. In December of 1898 her son is born, Edward, called Ned from the first week, and the nursery on the 3rd floor, which had gone quiet, is opened again for the grandson's visits, aired and refitted, the rocking horse recommissioned, and a new generation begins learning which floorboards creak. The house, 14 years old, has its second child. Houses age backward when that happens. Everyone below stairs says so. And the third small thing is the world outside the windows, because it has been moving while we danced. And this house does not stand in a painting. It stands on a street, and the street is alive, and the street, though not one person at the wedding breakfast would have believed you, the street has already begun the long turn that kills it. Look out the tall windows through these years, and here is what you see. Documented, dated, real. You see the avenue finish itself. The shanties and goats of Tommy Doyle's scaffold view are gone by 1890, blasted, graded, built over, the frontier closed in limestone and brick. You see the Easter parade become an institution. Each spring after services, the whole avenue from the cathedral northward turns into a slow river of silk hats and spring dresses, and the crowds come by elevated railway from all over the city just to walk it and look at each other, and the family goes down on foot like everyone else. because on Easter morning, once a year, the avenue belongs to anyone with a clean collar and the fair. You see, in February 1892, the society list printed in the papers, the famous 400 names actually published, as if society were a regiment with a muster roll, and the house's name is on it, and Mr. Fenwick irons that newspaper flat himself, and there is quiet satisfaction below stairs, and only Mr. Wardwell at his own breakfast table is heard to say that a fortress that publishes its garrison list is a fortress getting nervous. You see the opera boxes glitter up at Broadway and 39th in the Metropolitan Opera House the new families built in 1883, when the old Academy of Music wouldn't sell them boxes, built their own opera house sooner than be kept standing in a lobby. That is the pure spirit of this avenue, and this house was raised on it. And you see, south, always from the south, the way weather comes, the first commerce, a hotel where a private house stood, a dressmaker's discreet brass plate at a parlour window in the 40s, nothing alarming, nothing anyone names aloud at dinner. But Mr. Wardwell stands at his library window on quiet evenings in the late 90s, looking down the avenue with his after-dinner cigar unlit, and he is doing what he does, looking at a thing for a long time before speaking, and what he is looking at is the horizon of his own street, the way a captain looks at a line of cloud no bigger than a hand. Below stairs, meanwhile, the years turn with a rhythm as fixed as the liturgy. The season, winter, balls, dinners, the chandelier lit perhaps 30 nights between December and Lent, the house at full steam, spring, the Easter parade, the wedding and lilac weeks, then the great annual convulsion of closing, furniture shrouded in holland covers, chandelier bagged in muslin like a captive cloud, carpets up, camphor everywhere, the family off to Newport with 11 of the staff, the house left breathing slow with the skeleton crew of 6. You have stood in the shrouded ballroom in July, James, when the light comes grey through closed shutters and every chair is a ghost of itself, and heard the house tick and settle in the heat, and felt what every servant of every great house has felt in the off-season, that the house sleeps, actually sleeps, and that you are inside a sleeping thing and must walk softly. Autumn, the reopening, the unshrouding, the first fires, the smell of beeswax and fresh chintz and coal smoke knitting itself back together into the house's own winter smell, the one you'd know blindfolded. Then the season again, year on year on year. The 7th step introduces itself to every new housemaid once. You hear the thump and the gasp up the shaft, and the older women call down the old joke 7th step. Everyone does it the once, and the tread of it is growing a hollow now, a shallow scoop worn into the oak by thousands of climbs a week, 20-odd years of feet, the house keeping its own count of its own people, wearing softly where it is used and nowhere else. Mr. Fenwick turned 60 in 1899 and does not mention it. Bridget is made cook, the whole kitchen hers. In 1901, when the French chef departs in the wake of a duck pressed one time too many, and the family discovers what the servants' hall has known for a decade. The best food in the house was always coming from the second range where Bridget stood. She runs the kitchen the way Behan ran stone, and the first thing she does with cook's wages is bring over her mother, who has waited 20 years, and who takes one look at the kitchen, the copper ranked and blazing on the walls, the ice room, the larder, and says in Irish that it is a great pity to waste such a fine kitchen on Protestants. Bridget does not translate for the household. Some things are kitchen property, so the house stands at its zenith, and if you had asked anyone in it, above stairs or below, How long this would last, they would not even have understood the question. The house was the permanent thing. Fortunes might wobble, families might thin, but the stone, the stair, the chandelier, the great door with its great key, those were geology. You could no more imagine Fifth Avenue without its palaces than imagine the harbour without water. The house is 20 years old, it has 24 left, and the first blow, when it comes, doesn't come to this house at all. It comes in the spring of 1901 to the Marble Palace down at 34th Street, the grandest of the grand, the one that started the whole race. And it comes not as fire or ruin, but as something much more modern and much more frightening to the men who read the newspapers in this library. It comes as a real estate transaction. Change eyes with me again. James leaves the house in 1903, leaves well, with a character reference in Mr. Fenwick's own hand and a butler's post of his own in a smaller house on Madison. The machine promotes its good parts outward. So for this age of the house, borrow the eyes that see the most and are seen the least. You are Bridget now. You're 38 years old. You're the cook, and you've been inside this limestone body for 22 years, longer than any of the family has been alive in it except the master himself. You know the house the way you know your own hands, which is to say, without looking. You could walk it blind and name your floor by smell, coal and soap in the basement, beeswax and hyacinth on the first, cigar and calf leather at the library landing, sun-warmed dust and chalk on the nursery floor. The 7th step hasn't caught your foot since the year of the ball. Your risen bread knows the warm spot by the range flue. Your knees know the cold flag by the larder. A house, after 22 years, is not where you work. It is the shape your life has set into, like a loaf keeping the form of its pan. So when the Marble Palace at 34th Street comes down in 1901, you feel it the way sailors feel weather. Understand what happened, because all of Fifth Avenue is trying to understand it that spring. The grandest private house in America, white marble, $3 million of 1869 money. The house that made the avenue mean what it means has been sold, and the buyers do not want the house. They want the corner, the house, the marble, the frescoes, the bronze doors people used to cross the street just to look at. The house is in the way, and so it is demolished. Wreckers, scaffolds, dust wagons. 8 months. Men stand on the far sidewalk all that summer watching marble come down in slings, and the newspapers run drawings, and the thing every soul on this avenue had agreed not to know becomes suddenly, publicly known. A palace is not geology. A palace is a chattel sitting on land, and the moment the land under it is worth more than the glory on top of it, the glory is rubble. They build a bank on the corner. It is a very handsome bank. That is not the point. The point is a sentence Mr. Wardwell says at his own dinner table that October. The man opposite him is in real estate and has just called the demolition progress simply progress. And Mr. Wardwell looks at him for his usual long moment and says, "You misunderstand the trade, sir. We none of us own houses here. We rent stone from the future, and the future has begun calling in its loans." The footman waiting at the sideboard repeats it below stairs word for word, the way the good ones do, and the servants' hall is quiet for a moment, and then the hall boy laughs because he's 15, and you box his ear, not hard, without even thinking about why. Trade comes up the avenue after that the way tide comes up a beach. No single wave looks like much, and then you turn around, and the sand where you are standing is gone. In 1905, Tiffany's, the jeweller of this very world, raises its white palazzo of a store at 37th Street, and the ladies who used to receive their diamonds at home now motor down to shop for them, which is a distinction with a world inside it. In 1906 the department store follows. B. Altman's Dry Goods, a full square block of it at 34th and 5th, built politely in limestone so as not to frighten the mansions. A wolf in a very good coat. Shops, hotels, clubs, showrooms, each replacing a house whose family has sold and moved north, and the families moving north are perfectly cheerful about it. Take fine new houses in the 70s and 80s, tell each other the Upper Avenue is different. Ours is the residential section permanently, and the sold houses come down, and the checkerboard of the avenue flips square by square by square. Southern squares first, always northward. By 1914, when Lord & Taylor's new store opens at 38th Street, the stretch of Fifth Avenue below 42nd, the stretch that was the marrow of fashionable New York when this house's cornerstone went down, has no society left in it at all. 30 years, one human generation, from cornerstones to shop counters, and in 1916 the city, alarmed at last, passes the first zoning law in the country's history to sort towers from houses and lofts from ladies. A law, you understand, written to hold a tide with a rule book. The house at 62nd Street stands high up the beach, still, dry, safe, the tide barely past its ankles. But inside the house these same years, the tide is of another kind, and no law was ever drafted against it. The family's aging, and the house is emptying by inches. Old Mrs. Wardwell died quietly with the century, full of years, feuds unresolved and unregretted. Mrs. Constance, these 15 years, has her own establishment, her own dinners, her own life 4 blocks south. She comes on Sundays with Ned. The nursery works 1 day a week now. The season contracts, where the chandelier once burned 30 nights a winter, it burns 8, then 5, then the winter of 1906 to 07, twice. The gilt chairs stay in their basement racks so long that you send the hall boy down quarterly to dust the racks themselves. Half the 3rd floor is under Holland covers year round. The staff, 23 in the great years, is 17, then 14. Maids who leave to marry are not always replaced, and the agencies, this is new, and all the cooks on the avenue are saying it to each other at early mass, the agencies have less to send. The girls coming over now can get shop work, factory work, telephone exchange work, hard wages, but evenings of their own, and no cap, and no bell. You understand them completely, and hire what you can get, and teach each new one the 7th step. Ned is the light of these years, the house's Indian summer in a sailor suit. He is 7, 8, 9. He has his grandfather's trick of looking a long time before he speaks, and his mother's old free run of the whole house, park floor to attics, and the servants conspire in it, as servants always have. He knows the dumbwaiter and rides it twice before he is caught by you, and what he gets from you is a heel of new bread with sugar on it, and a lecture with no conviction in it whatever. And one wet March Saturday in 1906, the house quiet, his grandfather at the club, the nurse long since promoted to legend. Ned is on the nursery window seat with a pocket knife he's not supposed to have, and he folds back the shutter and he finds them. 2 grooved letters, grey under 4 coats of paint down in the corner. C.W. He is 7. It takes him a moment, then it lands on him, the whole vertigo of it. His mother was small, his mother sat here, His mother did a forbidden thing here and it kept, and he does the only right thing there is. He opens the little knife, and under her letters, gouging carefully, tongue between his teeth, he cuts his own N. And beneath the initials, because he is a thorough child, 1906, he shows nobody but you. He has to show somebody. And cooks are where the secrets of children have always been banked. You look at the sill a long time, the 2 sets of letters, the 60-year-old paint smell, the rain on the glass, and you tell him it will be their secret, his and yours and the house's, and you fold the shutter back over it. 20 years from that Saturday, almost to the season, a gloved finger will go straight to that corner. Remember that it is you, Bridget, who knows where the letters are. That knowledge has one more errand to run in this story, and it is the tenderest errand in it. And then the drawing room does the other thing drawing rooms of this world are for. Mrs. Wardwell, the mistress, Constance's mother, dies in the house in November of 1907 of pneumonia, 11 days from first chill to last breath, in the southeast bedroom with the park going gold and bare outside the windows. She dies at home because this world is born at home, married at home and buried from home. The hospital is for other classes and other emergencies, and the undertaker of this decade is a man who comes to you. What follows, the whole liturgy of it, is documented custom, and the house performs it like the instrument it is. Crape goes on the front door, black ribbon on the bell pull, the knocker muffled, and the avenue reads the door as it passes. That is what doors are for in 1907. A door is a newspaper with one headline. Blinds down, every window, all 4 floors. Clock stopped in the death room. The servants in black. You cook 11 days of funeral baking in a black armband. And the drawing room, the room of the lilac altar and the wedding breakfast, is emptied of its furniture, hung with black at the mirrors, and made a chapel once more, the coffin on trestles where the altar of lilies stood in 1897. White chrysanthemums banked to the chateau mantel, and for 2 days the avenue's carriages come again in a line down past 61st Street. The same line, the ball line, the wedding line, moving at the same walk. Only now the coachmen wear black rosettes, and nobody inside the house is counting stairs. 400 people file past under the shrouded chandelier. It is the largest gathering the ballroom floor has held in 6 years, and it is silent, and the chandelier, bagged in its summer muslin in November, hangs over it like a cloud with the lightning taken out. You stand at the pantry door with the trays, and you watch Mr. Wardwell receive the avenue's condolences for 2 hours, upright as the day he watched the cornerstone swing, and you think, you who have fed this man's household through 26 winters, that houses and masters age the same way. Nothing moves, and everything settles, a 1/4 inch, where only the people who dust it daily can see. After the burying, the blinds go up because they must. But here is what the avenue does not see, and you do. The blinds of the ballroom floor do not go up. There is no order given about it. It is simply that no occasion arises, that winter, or the next, and a room with no occasions keeps its dusk. The chandelier stays in its muslin. 11 years it stays in its muslin. The gilt chairs stand in their racks. The house is 42 rooms, and by 1910 it is lived in, truly lived in, fires and voices lived in, across about 9 of them. An old man, his library, his bedroom, his breakfast room, and the basement rooms of the 12 people it still takes to keep an old man in the manner the stone was raised to. The house is not dying. Let's be accurate, you and I, because the house's own people were accurate. Nobody below stairs said dying. The house is wintering. That was the word you used, and it is a hopeful word. Wintering is a thing you come back from. The house has 10 years left with lights in it. And the strange mercy is this. Before the dark, the house gets one more crowded season. One more era of footsteps in the ballroom. It is nothing anyone would have predicted, and it comes wearing a grey uniform with a red cross on the sleeve. New eyes now, and new hands. Cold ones. Because you have just come in off the avenue and it is January of 1918, and New York is having the bitterest winter anyone can remember, and the nation is at war. You are a volunteer. You're 26. Your husband is at Camp Upton learning to be infantry, and 3 mornings a week you climb the limestone steps of a Fifth Avenue mansion you would never otherwise have entered in your life. And a butler older than your grandfather opens an 11-foot oak door and bows you into so. Because this is what the great houses did in 1917 and 1918, and it is one of the strangest documented chapters in the whole life of the avenue. The palaces went to war. When America came in, April the 6th, 1917, the machinery of society swung over almost overnight, the way a mill changes what it grinds. The committees that had run cotillions began running relief drives. Ballrooms became workrooms. Up and down the avenue, houses whose names you knew from the society columns turned their ground floors over to the Red Cross and the war charities, surgical dressing units at the dining tables, wool depots in the music rooms, benefit bazaars in the picture galleries. Whole mansions lent entire to relief committees for the duration. It was fashion, partly. Comfort kits were what one did, as the season had once been what one did. But sit in one of those rooms through a February afternoon, and you will not be quick to sneer. The work was real. The wool was real. The list the work was checked against were real, and grew. So, the Wardwell Ballroom, January 1918. Come in as you first came in and see it. 'Cause nobody who saw it forgot the doubleness of it. The blinds are up for the first time in a decade. The light is needed, and the winter sun comes flat across 60 feet of parquet laid for waltzing. And on the parquet stand 12 deal trestle tables in 2 ranks, plain as a barracks. At the tables, 30 women, silken serge shoulder to shoulder, a senator's widow next to a grocer's wife next to you, all in the same grey veils, rolling bandages, gauze by the bale, muslin by the mile, the hiss of shears, the smell of new cotton, cloth and carbolic, cut by lily of the valley, because some habits do not surrender. 60 dozen dressings a day this room turns out, wound in blue paper, packed in pine cases stenciled ARC, carried down the marble steps by the same door the 400 came up. And above it all, you noticed it your very first morning, before you knew a single thing about the house, and it made you strangely quiet. Above it all hangs a vast shape in a muslin bag, high against the gilded ceiling, the chandelier, shrouded like a bell with its tongue held still, presiding over the trestle tables with its light put away. An old woman feeds this room. You know her as Mrs. Bridget, everyone wartime genteel now with names. The cook, Irish, white-haired, who sends up strong tea and bread with actual butter at 4 each afternoon, war or no war, and stands a moment at the ballroom door each day surveying the tables with an expression you cannot read. You are new to this house. You cannot know that she is reading the parquet, that she sees gilt chairs where the trestles stand, hears a mazurka under the shears. 34 years she has been under this roof. The house is on its 3rd army, and she has fed the 2nd and the 3rd. The staff is 7. 7 In a house built for 23, Mr. Fenwick, 78 now and straight as the door he keeps, Bridget, 1 kitchen maid, 2 housemaids, a useful man past draft age, a chauffeur. The horses went years ago. The last coachman's son is in France with the remount service. The footmen are gone to the army or the shipyards, and no one is coming to replace them. And here is a small documented cruelty of arithmetic you learn at the trestle tables. The housemaid who left at Christmas earns double now filling shells in New Jersey. The war did not invent the servant shortage. It merely finished what the shops and the switchboards began. Mr. Wardwell is 81. He comes down at 11 each morning, dressed as for 1885, and walks the length of the workroom between the tables, slowly, with a stick now, and stops at the far window and looks out at the park a long time, in the way you have learned is his way. On heatless days, because there are heatless days now, coal ordered, saved by federal decree, furnaces banked, whole floors of the house shut and frigid, ice ferns on the inside of the nursery windows. He wears his overcoat indoors and won't have it mentioned. Ned's regiment sailed in the spring. He came to the house before he went. You were there that morning at the tables, when he walked the workroom in his new lieutenant's uniform with his cap under his arm, 19 years old. And the shears fell quiet, table by table as he passed, the way talk falls quiet in church. He kissed his grandfather at the ballroom door. He went down to the kitchen. You learned this after, from the kitchen maid, in whispers. Went down the back stair he'd ridden the dumbwaiter past as a boy and hugged the cook, who had a parcel ready for him, wax paper and string, as if France were a school outing. And he made her laugh, made Bridget laugh out loud alone of that whole grave morning, though she never would repeat the joke. Then the great front door, Mr. Fenwick holding it, and the boy of the house went down the limestone steps 2 at a time, the old way, the counting way, and got into the motor, and was driven off down the avenue, south, the direction the tide comes from. You do not yet know. None of you at the trestle tables know, and I will say it only once and gently, that the house has now seen him for the last time. The telegram comes in October of 1918. Musar gone, the great grinding push in the last autumn of the war, the 47 days that fill the casualty columns the papers have taken to printing in smaller type. Second Lieutenant Edward Wardwell, 19 years old, killed the 3rd week of October, 3 weeks and 2 days before the end. The telegram goes, as telegrams properly go, to his mother's house 4 blocks south. But it is to this house that Constance comes, that same grey afternoon, past the sawhorse barricade of her own composure, up the steps she was carried up as a christened infant, and the workroom is not told anything, and the workroom knows within the hour, the way houses know. Mr. Fenwick draws the ballroom doors shut on your tables quietly, for the first time in all your months at the tables, and through the shut doors, once, briefly, you all hear it, 30 women bent suddenly very low over the gauze, the sound a mother makes in a shrouded drawing-room that has already held 1 coffin and will not even be given her sons, because her son is staying in France, in the American plot at Romaine with 14,000 others, permanently 19, permanently 3 weeks short. On the nursery window-sill under the folded shutter, under the frost ferns, CW and N and 1906. The house holds them now like the only copy of a document, which in a way is what they have just become, and then, 23 days later, because history has no shame about its timing, the war ends, and Fifth Avenue goes mad with joy under this house's windows, the 11th of November, 1918. You're at the tables that Monday morning when the sirens begin downtown, and then every bell and whistle in the harbour and the city together, and the avenue fills as if the whole population had been standing in the side streets waiting for a signal, which, after the false armistice 4 days before, it more or less had. By noon, there is no traffic, only people, curb to curb, a slow boiling river of them down the middle of Fifth Avenue, singing, weeping, banging dishpans, hoisting soldiers, burning the Kaiser in effigy at the corners, ticker tape and torn paper snowing from every window south of the park. The workroom gives up entirely. The shears lie where they fall. And this house, hear this, because it is the last time it happens, this house lights up. It is Mr. Wardwell's own order given to Mr. Fenwick at the top of the stairs, and Mr. Fenwick, 78, climbs the ladder himself, will not send the useful man, unties the muslin, and lights the chandelier. Every branch, gas and current together, the full 1140 crystals, 11 years of stored lightning let out at once at 4 o'clock on a November afternoon, with the blinds up and the windows thrown open to the cold. And the light pours out of the ballroom windows over the boiling avenue, and people in the crowd below look up. You are at the sill. You see them look up, hundreds of them, faces opening, and they cheer the house itself, as if the stone had done something. An old man stands at his lit window above a delirious city, with his overcoat on indoors, looking a long time, and behind him 30 women in grey veils stand among the trestles under the blazing crystal, and the pine cases stencilled ARC stand ranked by the door, and nobody in that room can tell that afternoon where the grief stops and the joy begins, and nobody tries. The chandelier burns until midnight. Then Mr. Fenwick climbs the ladder and puts it out, and bags the muslin back with his own hands gently, like a man closing a book he does not expect to open again. The workroom is wound up in the spring of 1919, with the wounded coming home, and the committees dissolving into committees for other things. On the last morning the trestles carried out, you volunteers stand a moment in the emptied ballroom, putting on your gloves. 60 feet of parquet, the muslin cloud asleep again overhead, and it is so quiet you can hear the avenue's new sound through the glass. Motors, only motors now, not a hoofbeat left. You will never be inside the house again. Going down the front steps, you pass the old butler holding the door, and you could not say what moves you. You thank him, not for the door, for all of it, the tea, the warmth, the 2 years. And Mr. Fenwick inclines his head exactly as he has inclined it since before your mother was born, and says the last words this story has from him. The house was glad of the company, madam. He retires that summer at 79, 59 years in service on 2 continents, and goes to live with a niece in New Jersey. And on his last evening, Bridget tells the kitchen maid. The kitchen maid tells the world. He walks the house top to bottom one final time, trying every shutter, and comes down the back stair and steps without looking over the hollow of the 7th step, and in the front hall, by the light of one lamp, he takes the great brass key off the ring he has carried at his waist for 35 years, polishes it once with his handkerchief, though it needs nothing, and lays it in the cook's 2 hands. There is protocol even for this in the old houses. There is a phrase, and he uses it, the Englishman's phrase, level as ever, only very quiet. The keys of the house, Mrs. Bridget. See them kept. And Bridget, who came into this house at 16 with scalded hands, who is 50 now, who has buried its mistress and its boy and fed its armies. Bridget holds the key of the greatest door on the block and cannot answer him at all. Now the 1920s come up the avenue, and I have walked you through that Manhattan on another night. The towers going up, the speakeasies going down, the whole electric roar of it. So you know the city this old house now finds itself standing in, like a dreadnought moored in a motorboat regatta. What that other night's story didn't tell you is what the 20s did to the palaces. It killed them, not with a crash, with a ledger. And because this is the part of the house's life with the fewest witnesses, the part that happened behind drawn blinds, I want to walk you through the arithmetic of the dying slowly, because it is the most documented and least told chapter of the whole street. Mr. Wardwell dies in March of 1921 in the southeast bedroom, in the house, as his wife did, as his world did it. He is 84. He has outlived his wife, his grandson, his butler's tenure, his avenue's meaning, and, by exactly the margin history loves, the world his house was built to conquer. The drawing room does its office one last time. Crape on the door, blinds down, the coffin where the wedding altar stood, the avenue's motor cars now, in a line down past 61st Street. It is a thin line. Half the names that filed under the shrouded chandelier in 1907 are themselves dead or in Paris, or simply old, and the young ones, the Ned-aged ones who lived, do not do the avenue's liturgies anymore. The 20s have better funerals downtown. And then the lawyers open the will, and the house, for the first time in its 37 years, meets its true enemy, not fire, not fashion, addition. Sit at the long library table with Constance. She is 44 now, a widow herself since the winter of the influenza, and the only heir. Sit with her through that spring as the men in black coats lay the sums before her, because every great house on this avenue is holding some version of this meeting in these very years, and the sums are why the street you're picturing tonight no longer exists. Item, the federal estate tax, new in 1916, when the war needed money, the first real death duty in American history, and raised again while the war ate money faster. By the time Mr. Wardwell's estate is assessed, the top of it is taxed at a full quarter. A quarter of everything owed in cash within the year. The men in black coats say figures. Call the estate what the papers guessed, some 12 millions. The government's share alone, federal and state together, is over $3 million, cash, which means selling things. And the things a fortune of 1882 is made of do not sell quickly in 1921 without loss. Item, the house itself, which the will, with terrible tenderness, leaves to Constance outright. The men in black coats have prepared this page carefully. To run the house at 62nd Street as her father ran it, even at his reduced scale, 12 servants, coal, repairs, insurance, taxes, cost some $90,000 a year. To run it as it was built to run, the 23-soul, 30 fires season-keeping ship of 1890 would cost $150,000 and could not be done at any price, because the crew no longer exists on the labour market of 1921. The footman is now a chauffeur in Yonkers. The parlour-maid is a typist. The kitchen-maid works the counter at a lunchroom on Lexington, with her evenings her own, and the agencies ask for a staff of 20, laugh politely into the telephone, and the city's tax assessment on the property has tripled since 1900, because the assessor does not tax what stands on the land. He taxes what could. That is the noose, and every mansion on the avenue is in it. The house is assessed not as a home, but as the ghost of the 12-story building the corner wants to become. Its own possibility is billed against it at full valuation every year. Item, and the black coats slide this one across last, because it is the one with mercy in it, the offers. There are standing offers for the corner, not for the house. You understand that by now, the way all of Fifth Avenue has been made to understand it since 1901. For the land under it, the figures are enormous. The figures are more than the house cost, more than its contents, more than everything her father spent on it in 40 years, because 75 feet of Fifth Avenue frontage in the 1920s is worth more empty than crowned. Constance listens. She has her father's long look. The men in black coats find it disconcerting. And she does not sell. Not that year. She shuts the house instead, which is the Avenue's grand rearguard gesture of these years. The thing half the surviving families do while they decide what they cannot yet bear to decide. The remaining staff is paid off, pensioned where pensions were promised. Bridget, 37 years, gets the cottage money her master wrote into the will in his own hand, and we will come to her last hour in the house in a moment. The pictures go to storage, the silver to the bank, the boiler is drained, the water is shut, and the windows. This is the sight the 20s made ordinary up and down the avenue, the sight that says everything. The tall windows that lit 400 dancers are boarded. Pine planking over plate glass nailed from inside. The great door is not boarded. The great door merely closes, and a house agent's discreet green tin sign goes up beside it where the crepe used to hang. Constance moves, and here the house's story joins the street story so exactly that the historians use it as the very emblem of the decade. Constance moves to an apartment on Park Avenue, 12 rooms on a high floor of a new limestone cliff over the buried railroad tracks, with a staff of 4, a kitchen the size of the old larder, and no stairs at all. An elevator, run by a man in uniform who is, if you think about it, the whole footman's line compressed into one polite survivor. Her rent for a year is what one ball cost her mother. Her building holds 30 families of exactly her sort, the heirs of exactly the houses whose fathers built the avenue, stacked in comfort, 10 stories of Fifth Avenue's children who have all done the same sum and gotten the same answer. Nobody in the building thinks it is a come-down. It is a relief. That is the part the elegies leave out, and honesty was our bargain tonight. The palaces were magnificent, and the people who inherited them fled with a sigh you could hear from the street. A 12-room flat with steam heat does not need to be wintered, aired, staffed, mourned in, or explained. It locks with one small flat key. Constance keeps that key in her handbag. The other key, the great brass one, heavy as a spoon, long as a hand, she keeps in the drawer of her writing desk, where her cigarette case knocks against it every morning, and what she thinks when she hears that small brass knock she tells nobody. But the last hour with lights in it belongs to Bridget, so we go back for it to a November evening in 1921, and we borrow her eyes one final time. You are the last one. That was the arrangement you made with the estate men without quite making it. The others left by 1s and 2s through the autumn, and you stayed to see the house decently shut because someone must, and it would not have occurred to you to be anywhere else. And somewhere in that sentence notice you have become Mr. Fenwick, the way sergeants become their colonels. For a week you have worked alone through the shrouding. Holland covers on what furniture stays, camphor and cedar, the copper pans, your copper, your regiment, 37 years bright, wrapped piece by piece in flannel like christening gifts. You have drained your kettles, you have raked out the great range's firebox with your own hands and blacked it cold. A kitchen goes strange when its fire dies. The warm spot by the flue where 3 generations of your bread rose is just a wall now, and the room's smell begins to change within hours, coal and stock and scald giving way to stone and dust. The smell of the cellar the day you first walked into it, 16 years old, off the boat 11 months. A house being shut runs its smells backward. On the last evening you walk it top to bottom, because Mr. Fenwick did, and his ghost would try the shutters. Attics. The iron bedsteads of 23 souls stripped, ranked in the cold like the gilt chairs below. The nursery. And here you do the errand you have owed a dead boy for 15 years. You fold back the shutter, and find the corner, and touch the grooves with one finger. CW. N. 1906. And you fold the shutter closed on them, very gently, like tucking in a child, and you do not cry, because you are on duty, and you learned from an Englishman what that means. The ballroom, 60 feet of dark, the muslin cloud overhead just visible, holding its 1140 sparks of stored lightning with no one left to strike for. The drawing room, all Holland, the chateau mantle white-shrouded like everything it ever presided over. The library where the cigar smell is already fading out of the calf leather, and where you permit yourself the one sentence you say aloud in the whole empty house. To the chair where an old man used to look at things a long time before speaking. Well, sir, she's seen to. Then down the back stair, one lamp in your hand, 52 years old in the dark shaft, your feet no blind, and at the bottom flight your toe finds the hollow of the 7th step, the worn scoop of it, 37 years of your own climbs in it among the thousands, and you stand on it a moment, on the house's whole memory of its people, and then you step down and out of the story of your life, the great door from outside in the November dark, the brass key heavy as a spoon, you turn it, 1, 2, the deep oiled clunk, the sound that ended every night of the house's life, now ending all of them at once, and you take the key from the lock, and you carry it 4 blocks south through the motor-trafficked Park Avenue, and you deliver it upstairs into the hands of Miss Constance, 44 years old, and you will call her Miss Constance until one of you dies, and neither of you manages the protocol phrase, and it does not matter. The elevator man takes you down. The doorman finds you a taxi. You ride away through the bright, rattling city with your hands folded on your bag, Bridget Cook of No House. And behind you in the dark above 62nd Street the boarded palace stands with everything I have shown you sealed inside it, the coin in its foot, the letters under the shutter, the cloud of crystal, the hollowed step holding its breath behind the planks. It holds it for 5 years. Boys stone the upper windows the first summer. The agent boards those too. Handbills gum themselves to the limestone. Soot streaks down from the dead chimneys like the stone-weeping dirt, and the carved lions over the door go black-jowled, snarling at a street of delivery trucks. The avenue flows past without looking. The 20s have no time for haunted dreadnoughts. There are 11 other boarded mansions between the park's corner and the cathedral by 1925, and the guidebooks of the decade point them out to tourists exactly the way they point out ruins in Rome. A night watchman from the agency tries the door twice a week and moves on, a bored man rattling the handle of the biggest door on the block, never knowing or caring what the lock was, or whose hands polished its key, or what the last sound it made had meant to the woman who made it. and in the first week of March 1926, the agent's men take the green tin sign down, the corner has been sold. It is worth pausing one breath on what kind of year 1926 is on Fifth Avenue, so you understand that what happens next to our house is not a tragedy happening to one unlucky building. It is the weather. This is the peak of the Great Demolition Wave, the years the papers themselves call the passing of Fifth Avenue. The mansions of the 80s and 90s are coming down in ranks now, sold by heirs who've all sat at that same long table with the same men in black coats and done the same arithmetic. This very year, 20 blocks south of our corner, the wreckers are inside the grandest of them all. The 130-room French chateau of Vanderbilt built at 57th Street, the biggest private house New York ever raised. And a department store will stand where it stood. When that house goes, everyone understands that all of them will go. If the greatest is not worth keeping, nothing on the avenue is. Demolition itself has become an industry with famous men in it. There is a wrecker in this town, Jacob Volk, whose boast is that he has knocked down more of New York than any man alive, who is called in the papers the master of the art of tearing down, and who is said to have said he'd never wrecked anything he was sorry for except a good bar. The 20s find this funny. The 20s are building something on every corner of every hour, and to the 20s a standing mansion is not history. It is a delay. But before the wreckers, the house must be emptied, and the emptying of a Fifth Avenue mansion is a public ceremony, the last one in its repertoire, and the crowds come to it as they came to all the others. It is called an auction. This too is documented custom, the standard liturgy of the demolition years. The auction galleries take the house over for a week, catalogue everything down to the boot scrapers, and throw the doors open, first for the exhibition days when anyone at all may walk in off the avenue and handle the goods, then for the sale. And so, on 3 warm April days in 1926, the great door of the house stands propped wide from 10 until 5, propped with a wooden wedge, the door that Mr. Fenwick opened by hand and by rank for 35 years, and the public walks up the limestone steps and in, stand in the hall one last time and watch it, because the house has never held a crowd like this and never will again. 900 people a day, dealers with thumbed catalogues and pencils behind their ears, decorators hunting bargains for Westchester dining rooms, brides-to-be, curiosity seekers by the 100, come to see how the Wardwells lived. Now that the seeing is free, the same public that stood behind the sawhorses in the 9-degree dark of 1886 watching diamonds cross 12 feet of carpet, standing now in the ballroom itself in their spring coats, on the waltzed parquet, under the chandelier, which hangs unbagged at last, lot number 61, with a printed tag on a string looped around its lowest bronze branch. Everything wears a tag. The Chateau mantle out of a French castle, lot 44. The library's calf-bound thousands, sold by the shelf-foot. The cairnstone is not in the catalogue. Ye cannot auction walls. The walls are already sold to the ball and chain. And the gilt chairs. Here is the detail you keep, the one the whole day compresses into. The 12 dozen little gold-legged chairs with the crimson silk seats, up from the basement racks where they waited 30 years for balls that stopped coming. They stand now in banked rows in the ballroom for the bidders to sit on, doing their old work one final time, and in the aisles the overflow public handles the spares. A fat man tips one, testing its joints. A dealer flips one upside down to squint at its maker's stamp with a jeweller's glass. A bored child rocks one on 2 legs until her mother swats her. Strangers' hands, everywhere, On everything. All day. The whole architecture of this house was built to keep at 12 feet of red-carpeted distance. And the house, propped open, dead-boilered, cannot even go cold about it, because it has been cold for 5 years. The sale itself takes 2 afternoons. The auctioneer is superb in the way of his trade, reverent about provenance for exactly as long as reverence lifts the bidding. The numbers tell the whole decade. The mantle that cost a fortune at the top of the market goes for less than a third of it to an agent bidding, the room whispers, for a museum. We'll follow that mantle later, so mark it. The chandelier, 1140 crystals, Rue de Paradis, the sky Tommy Doyle stood under in his lime-stiff jacket, is knocked down for $1,100 to a hotel syndicate's buyer. $1 a crystal near enough, and the room does not even murmur because 6 identical palaces are selling their skies this same spring, and the market is glutted with chandeliers. Glutted with chandeliers. Hold that phrase. There has never been such a sentence in the history of the world before this decade, and there will never be such a sentence again. Constance attends 1 hour of one afternoon, veiled, at the back, unrecognised, or recognised, which on this avenue is the same thing, since no one of her world would dream of greeting her here. She watches her mother's drawing-room suite go at furniture store prices. She watches lot 61 knock down. Then she goes home to Park Avenue in a taxi. What she carries in her handbag, besides the flat key of her apartment, is the great brass key of a door that now stands propped with a wedge, wanted by nobody, securing nothing. And if you ask why a sensible widow carries half a pound of dead brass around Manhattan, you have never owned anything twice. Once as a thing, and once as everything. The wreckers come on the 2nd Monday of May, 1926. New eyes now, the last pair, I promise, and the youngest. You are 19. You are a labourer on a house-wrecking crew, a stripper, the trade calls it. Because demolition in 1926 is not explosion, it is digestion. A great house is eaten in reverse order of its building, finish first, structure last, and everything with the resale value goes carefully into trucks, because your employer paid for this carcass and means to be paid back for every doorknob. Your foreman is a thick, quiet Ulsterman of 60 who has wrecked 40 houses on this avenue and remembers dancing outside half of them on the sidewalk as a boy when the awnings were up. On the first morning, on the limestone steps, he gives the crew the same speech he always gives, 6 sentences, and you will remember 2 of them all your life. Everything comes out whole that can come out whole. Lads, everything in this city is scaffolding for what comes next. We're just the fellas that take it down. You go in through the great door, no key, the agent's wedge is still under it, and the house takes your breath, and the foreman lets it 30 seconds. He always budgets the 30 seconds. Marble hall going up into shadow. Honey-coloured stone carved into leaves and lions 60 hands high. A staircase out of a dream of Rome. Silence with 40 years of furniture polish still hanging in it. Then, "Right," says the foreman, and the crowbars go in at the first moulding, and the scream of the first nail is the new voice of the house, and from now on it speaks nothing else. You strip it for 5 weeks, top down, attic bedsteads, out, doors, 211 doors, unhung, stacked, numbered, trucked. The mahogany handrail comes off the great stair in 8-foot lengths, each one wrapped like a rifle. The 52 marble treads are pried whole and crated. bound, the foreman says, for the front hall of a moving picture theatre in Brooklyn, where there will be walked by more people in a week than walk them here in 40 years. And if the house has a heaven, that is either it or the other place. You work in a fog of plaster dust that turns all of you grey as statues by 9 each morning. It packs your nostrils, grits your teeth, sifts down your collar, floats in the tea. At night you cough it into your pillow and your hair leaves a white ghost on the ticking. Below the dust the smells come up in layers as the crowbars go deeper, the house exhaling its whole life in reverse, as it is unbuilt exactly as it ran its smells backward when it was shut. Camphor, then cold soot, then beeswax, then, when you breach the shut kitchen and the dead flues, one last hoarded breath of coal and roast that is 1890 itself, loosed into 1926 and gone out the glassless windows over the delivery trucks. And on the Thursday of the first week, hauling salvage down the back stair in the dark of the shaft with a door on your shoulder, your toe catches the shallow 7th step and you go down on one knee, hard, door and all, and your mate above you laughs, and you curse the carpenter, dead 40 years, who missed his inch. And I want you to see this one hole, because nobody else ever will. A boy stumbling, and around his boot, invisible under the plaster dust, a smooth worn hollow. 10,000 climbs of Bridget, of the housemaids whose names not even I have kept, of Mr. Fenwick's last round, of a hall boy running up with a spun-sugar swan, the house's entire memory of its people, holding a stranger's foot for half a second, one last time, teaching the last lesson it will ever teach to the last human being who will ever climb it. Everyone does it the once. You'll never do it again. Nobody will ever do it again. The stair comes out on Saturday in 8-foot lengths, and the 7th step goes onto the scrap wagon with its brothers, and I cannot tell you which of the fires of that ash-hungry city it warmed, and neither can anyone. By the 5th week the house is a shell, and the heavy gangs arrive, and the sound changes from the scream of nails to the boom of sledges and the long, trundling roar of chutes. The roof goes, the floors go, story by story, the joists Tommy watched riveted dropping one by one down the well of the house, and on a bright morning in the 3rd week of June, you are on the rubble pile in the areaway loading. The signal clears the street, and the winch takes up the slack on the pull cables, and the ballroom wall, the whole avenue-side wall of the room where the 400 waltzed and the grey veils rolled 60 dozen dressings a day, leans out very slowly, seems for one heartbeat to decide, and lets go, and comes down in a single avalanche of limestone and canstone and plaster roses, boom, into the street bed, and the dust column climbs 6 stories, higher than the house ever stood, and hangs there glittering in the June sun over Fifth Avenue like the ghost of a chandelier, and the traffic stops, and the whole avenue, for one held breath, is silent, looking up, exactly as it looked up at the lit windows on Armistice Day. And then the dust leans and travels and settles like snow on the hats, and the trolley wires and the roofs of the motor cars, and the traffic moves, because it is 1926, and there is somewhere everyone needs to be. That is the loudest moment this story has, and it is over, and it is the last one. I told you at the start, this is a story for sleep, and the house knew how to leave a room. From here to the end, everything gets quieter and slower and smaller, the way things do late at night, a demolition running backward into lullaby. Stay with me. The best of it, the gentlest of it, is still ahead. 4 small journeys, 1 old man at a fence and a coin. So let me wind back a few weeks, into the hush of the stripping, because 3 departures happened in those weeks that I kept aside on purpose. Kept for now, for after the noise, the way you save the gentlest letters to read last. The first is the chandelier. It comes down in the 2nd week before the parquet is lifted, because you do not swing crystal over a torn floor. It comes down the way it went up, 42 years earlier almost to the season. A scaffold tower, 4 men, and a 5th man on the floor with the list. The hotel syndicate has sent its own list man, and the original packing list too, on paper gone the colour of weak tea, Rue de Paradis, 1884, 1140 numbered pieces, because the maker's numbers are still on the hooks, and the linen bags are still in the maker's crate, and the crate has waited out the whole story in the sub-basement, 12 feet on a side, too big and too well made for anyone ever to have thrown away. And so, on a warm May morning, in a gutted ballroom with the windows already glassless and the pigeons already investigating, 4 wreckers in grey dust stand on a tower, unhooking a sky 1 drop at a time, wiping each crystal with a rag, sliding each into its numbered bag, while the 5th man reads the numbers aloud like a priest reading a litany. The same litany, the same numbers, backward. It takes 9 days. Nobody hurries them. Crystal is money. On the last morning the bare bronze skeleton, all 48 branches empty, is lowered whole on the block and tackle, turning slowly as it comes, and 4 men walk it out through the great doorway into the June light. And that is how the chandelier of the Wardwell house leaves Fifth Avenue, feet first in its own cradle, attended, like everything else that ever mattered here, by working men whose names nobody wrote down. The crate is trucked to a warehouse on 11th Avenue, and there, I will be honest with you to the end, the paper trail of our composite chandelier dissolves into the fate of all its real sisters. Some hung again in hotel lobbies and picture palaces, and shone on more human beings in a year than the old ballroom saw in a lifetime. Some waited in warehouses through the crash that nobody in 1926 sees coming, and were sold for scrap bronze in leaner decades. 1 or 2 hang today in buildings whose guests walk under them nightly and never once look up. 1140 crystals somewhere. When you next pass under an old chandelier in an old lobby, look up. You may be standing under a ballroom. The 2nd departure is a piece of a windowsill 14 inches long. Bridget, pensioned, cottaged out on Long Island with a nephew's family, 58 years old and still rising at 6 because bodies keep the bells long after the bells are gone. Bridget reads in the paper that the house is coming down, and she does not mourn to the nephew's wife, and she does not take the train in to stand at the fence like the other old servants of the avenue, who do stand at the fences of these demolitions all through the 20s, small unexplained clusters of elderly men and women watching wreckers with their hats in their hands. Instead, she does the correct thing, the below-stairs thing. She writes a letter to Miss Constance on Park Avenue. 4 sentences in a copper-plate hand the nuns of Queenstown beat into her 50 years ago. I ask pardon for the liberty. Before the 3rd floor is gone, the nursery window, the sill under the left shutter. Master Ned cut his letters there under your own, in the year 1906, and showed me, and it was our secret. But a secret is no use to a wrecking ball. Your obedient B. And so, on a Tuesday in the 3rd week of the stripping, a taxi stops at the plank fence, and a woman of 49 in grey comes to the gate with the foreman's name on a card, and the foreman, who's had this visit at 40 houses, the trade calls them relic hunters, and the good foreman are gentle with them, walks her up a labourer's plank ramp, through the doorless doorways of her father's house, up the naked brick well where the marble stair was, to a third-floor room open to the weather where a shutter hangs by one hinge. You are there. You're the boy sent along with the pry bar and the cross-cut saw. She folds back the broken shutter herself. She finds the corner with one gloved finger, fast, no searching. 40 years since the pen nib, because a body keeps its maps. CW, and beneath, N1906. She stands looking at it a long time. You notice she looks at things a long time before speaking, and you are the last person in this story to notice that, in the last room of the house, it will ever be noticed in. And then she says, in a voice you'll think about on your own stairs some night years from now, he went over them twice, so they'd keep. You cut the sill for her at the marks the foreman chalks, 14 inches, 2 hand spans of painted mahogany, 4 coats of paint and 2 children deep, and you sand the raw ends smooth because your hands do it before you think, and the foreman says nothing, and she watches you do it and says nothing, and when you give it to her she takes it the way people take babies, one hand under. At the gate she tries to give the foreman $10. He touches his cap and refuses, and stands watching her taxi go, and delivers, around his pipe, the shortest eulogy the house will get from the trade that killed it. That's the whole cargo, lad. The rest is stone. The sill goes to Park Avenue, into the 12-room flat, where it lies for years in the drawer of a writing desk beside a great brass key, the 2 heaviest small objects in Manhattan, and I will tell you where such relics as those went in the end, because the end of this kind of story is documented too, to nieces, to attic trunks, to estate sales in other decades, to strangers who buy a scratched piece of old mahogany for $1 because something about 2 sets of initials and a date stops their hand in the bin. If you've ever stood at a flea market table holding some carved and dateless thing, wondering what it was to somebody, now you know. It was this. It was all of this. That is what those objects are, houses compressed. The third departure is the mantel, and with it the walls themselves. Lot 44, the chateau mantel of carved French walnut 200 years old before the house was won, goes out crated to the agent who bought it for a museum, and this is no invention of mine but the signature habit of the decade. The museums of the 20s are buying rooms. Panellings, ceilings, staircases, whole interiors stripped from doomed houses on this avenue, and doomed chateaux abroad, numbered stone by stone and board by board, to be reassembled behind velvet ropes as period rooms. The Metropolitan has just opened a whole wing built of such rescues. Room after room after room, each one the pickled heart of a dead house. The dealers' vans and the museum's crates stand at the same demolition fences bidding against the scrap man. So the library's oak panelling quarter sawn, flashing like watered silk where the crowbars bear it, that goes out flat in numbered bundles, museum-bound or dealer-bound, towards some future room it will line in some city it has never heard of, and the Caen stone, the carved honey-coloured leaves and ribbons and lions' heads that the small, precise men chiselled out in the shed while a mason's boy watched, eating his bread. The best of the Caen stone is sword-free in slabs and crated for the architectural warehouses down by the river, acres of racked and numbered fragments of the avenue's dead palaces, cornices and columns and fonts and lions, waiting decades in the dark to be bought by a bank lobby or a Long Island garden or nobody. Understand what this means, and it is the strangest, most secret fact in the whole afterlife of Fifth Avenue. The mansions did not entirely die. They were digested. They went to pieces the way a ship goes to pieces on a beach, where every plank is carried off and built into cottages, invisibly, namelessly, everywhere. There are apartment lobbies in this city today with the dead mansion's marble underfoot. There are suburban gardens with a ballroom's cherubs in them. 60 miles from the ballroom, the avenue is still all around you, atomized, anonymous, load-bearing. Cities do not bury their dead, they wear them. And now, the walls down, the dust settled, the sight a broken field of footings with the June sun on it. Now, at last, the fence. Because there has been, for some days, an old man at the fence. The wreckers know the type and let him be. Working man's Sunday coat on a weekday, white moustache, big slabbed hands quiet on the fence rail, watching not the way the tourists watch. Tourists watch the falls, but the way a man reads. He comes mornings, an hour at a time, and on the day the compressor gang starts breaking the footings themselves, for the new building's cellars will go deeper than the old. The towers of 1926 root far below the palaces of 1882. On that day the old man does not stand at the fence. He comes to the gate and asks for the foreman, and the two of them talk for a minute, grey head to grey head, and then the foreman, and you have never seen this, not on any job. The foreman waves the compressor quiet with one hand, and calls you over with the other, you and your sledge, and walks the three of you out across the rubble field to the northeast corner, to a particular squared block, half sunk in the broken ground, with the stub of a mortar joint along its top edge. "This one," says the old man. His voice is easy, only his hands give him away. "Northeast corner, first stone laid, April of 82, there's $1 under her. I set it there myself, more or less." And he smiles at something 44 years away. The morning she was born. His name, he says it's the foreman, touching his cap, and the foreman says it back to him with the particular respect the trade keeps for its own. His name is Doyle, Thomas Doyle, mason, 59 years old, built half the avenue, and he says buried the other half, and knows which jobs were which by his knuckles. And you are 19, and it has never once occurred to you until this exact moment, standing in the wreckage with the sledge in your hands, that every ruin you have fed to the chutes this month was once the newest thing on the street. That some grey man carried its bricks up ladders at your age, at your wage, with your back. That the two trades, his and yours, are the same trade read in different directions. That somebody, some June morning far downstream, will stand on the broken footings of everything you will ever help to raise. The foreman nods at the stone. You set the wedge and swing, and the old mortar lets go along the joint like a breath let out at last, and the cap of the footing shifts, and Doyle himself kneels, waves you off, kneels alone, on the good knee, in the rubble of the house he tended into the world, and works his slab of a hand in under the raised stone, into the dark of the bed where no light has reached since a spring dawn in 1882, and feels along the old mortar, and stops, and brings it out. Black at first. Just a black disc, mortar crusted at the rim. He spits on his thumb like a workman, and rubs in small circles patiently, standing there in the sun with the compressor silent and 3 generations of the wrecking trade watching an old man polish something in the middle of a field of ruin. And the black gives, and under it, untouched, unbreathed on, brighter than anything for a mile of that worn-out avenue, the silver comes up, the eagle, and around the eagle, the year, 1882. Nobody says anything at all, because what is there to say? Then Doyle closes his hand. The split at the base of the right thumb healed these 40 years, the white seam of it still there. You can see it from where you stand. And he looks around the site once slowly. The whole rubble field, the crated stone, the sky standing shocked and empty, where 4 stories of limestone stood since before any of you but him was born. And he says, not sadly, that's the thing you'll misremember and correct yourself on for 50 years. It was not said sadly. Well, that's a scene out, a pause. We build for the owner's son. The ages make their own arrangements. He shakes the foreman's hand. He puts the dollar in his waistcoat pocket where it hangs with a cold particular weight he last felt in his palm at 15. And he goes out the gate and away down Fifth Avenue south, through the crowds and the motors and the shop windows standing where the palaces stood. An old mason with a silver dollar, the first man in this story and the last. And of what became of Thomas Doyle after the gate, this story honestly says nothing. He was every man who built that street. The gate closes on him, and history, which never recorded him going in, did not record him going out. The coin was the last of it. Now there is only the settling. The site stands empty for 11 days. 11 days in which a corner of Fifth Avenue is, for the first time since the goats, just ground. A raw rectangle of broken rock and June weeds already starting at the fence line. 75 feet of the most expensive nothing on earth. Children look through the knot-holes. Then the new fence goes up, taller with the builder's sign on it. A name, a rendering, an artist's confident perspective of a limestone tower. And the steam shovels come, and the derricks after them, and by the winter of 1926 the steel is climbing. 13 stories of it, riveted by men who sing filthy songs in 3 languages, because that, at least, the avenue keeps. The apartment house opens in the autumn of 1927. It is, everyone agrees, a very fine building. Limestone below, restrained above, a doorman under a wine-coloured awning where the carved lions snarled. It holds 26 families, 2 to a floor, in suites of 11 rooms, which means that the corner that housed 4 Wardwells and 23 servants now houses perhaps 130 souls, warm, elevated, steam-heated, their maids sleeping in small rooms behind the kitchens. 2 maids to a family now, not 23 to a house, and home by the maid's own latchkey on Thursdays, which is the whole social history of America in one sentence. The families who move in are pleasant people. Not one of them knows what stood there. Why would they? The building is new. The avenue is a canyon of such buildings. The 20s do not look down. Somewhere below their cellar floor, below the wine bins and the ash hoists, in undisturbed dirt beside the print of an older footing, there is nothing at all now. Even the coin is gone south in a mason's waistcoat. And that, if you want it in one line, is the difference between this kind of history and the kind with monuments. When this kind ends, it ends clean. The ground forgets first, and the ground forgets completely. But objects are slower to forget than ground. So before I put the lights out, let me tell you where the pieces of the house are on the night you're listening to this. Because some of them, in the way of the pieces of all those houses, are certainly still somewhere, and somewhere is a real address. The mantle is in a museum. Lot 44, the Chateau Walnut, 200 years old before the house was 1 and near 250 now. It stands installed against a gallery wall, with a small printed label that gives its French province and its century and the words gift of, and does not mention, labels never mention, the 75 feet of vanished limestone it warmed for 40 years in between, the stockings hung from it, the coffin that stood before it twice, the bride photographed beside it under lilac in 1897. Museum visitors drift past it at the rate of a few hundred a day. Once, this is yours to imagine, but you have earned it 44 years deep into this house. Once, some afternoon in some year, a very old woman in grey stood in front of it for a long time, looking at it the way her father looked at things, while a guard decided not to ask. And if her gloved finger touched quickly the carved vine at the corner where a small girl's fingers used to trace it on tiptoe, the guard decided not to see that either. Guards, at bottom, are in service too. Some things are below stairs property forever. The doorknob is in a junk shop. Some doorknob of the 211 doors worth, bronze, acanthus chased, big as an orange, black with 50 years of other people's houses since, is lying tonight in a bin of doorknobs in a second-hand shop, in that permanent twilight of shops on avenues the fashion left, priced at less than the auction catalogue that listed its door. It has been picked up and put down by 100 browsing hands. Some day somebody will buy it, for bookends, for a lark, for a renovation, and will never know, standing at the counter, that they are holding the exact warm weight that filled Mr. Fenwick's palm 11,000 nights in a row. 1, 2, clunk. The key itself, the great brass master, heavy as a spoon, long as a hand, that went where I told you. A writing desk drawer on Park Avenue, beside 14 inches of painted mahogany, and after that, wherever such drawers empty out to when their owners die. An attic, a niece, a table at a flea market, a bin like this bin. It is somewhere tonight. It still remembers its lock the way a body keeps its maps. There is no lock on earth it opens. There never will be again. It doesn't know that. Keys never do. And the stairs, the 52 marble treads, are in Brooklyn, in the lobby of a picture palace, walked nightly by typists and shipping clerks and their sweethearts on the way up to the loges, 6,000 feet a week where 200 a year once passed, and every tread is wearing finally the way stone wears when it is loved by multitudes instead of owned by one, hollowing softly in the middle, the way the 7th step hollowed, and not one soul climbing them to the Thursday feature has ever counted them, and so not one soul knows what you know, which is that they still come out to 52, and that the world, in that one respect at least, still holds. That is the whole inventory. A mantle behind ropes, crystals in unnumbered lobbies, stone in nameless gardens, a knob in a bin, a key in a drawer, a sill in an attic, a coin in a dead mason's family somewhere, kept or spent, silver either way, and a hollow worn in a step that no longer exists, which is the only thing on the list that was ever really the house, and which exists now in exactly one place, which is here, in the telling. You hold it now too. That's how houses actually survive, not in stone, in the told. Forever, on that street, was 44 years. And here is the gentle joke the century played, the one I'll leave you with. The apartment building, the plain, sensible 13-story stone that replaced our palace and knew nothing about it. That building is standing yet 100 years old now itself, and older tonight than the mansion ever got to be, with its own worn steps and its own basement secrets and its own great turnover of souls. And somewhere in it, it may be, a child is counting the stairs. Buildings don't compete, only builders do. The city is a tide, and every wave in it believes it is the sea, and the believing is what gets the stone raised at all, and the stone never minds. Bean told you the whole story at the sidewalk's edge in 1884, if you were listening. We build for the owners. The ages make their own arrangements. So, it's late. The house is gone, and the people are gone, and nothing is left to happen to anyone. That is not a sad sentence at this hour. That is the safest sentence there is. Every debt in this story is settled, every key surrendered, every fire raked out cold. There is nothing to guard and nothing to lose, and no bell that can possibly ring for you before morning. Centuries will pass. The avenue you drifted down tonight will change past knowing again, and then again. The shops will fall as the palaces fell, the towers will fall as the shops fell, and the ground, which forgets first and forgets completely, will carry it all lightly, the way it carried the goats, the way it carried the ballrooms. The chandeliers will scatter, the mantles will migrate, the keys will outlive every lock they remember, but people will still stand at lit windows on winter nights, looking down at other people looking up, still count the stairs on the way up to bed to make sure the world holds, still press some small bright thing into wet mortar so the building will remember being born. Some things don't change. The wish to leave a mark where no one will find it for 40 years, that doesn't change. And you've been so many pairs of hands tonight, cracked ones, powdered ones, scalded ones, grey-dusted ones. You can put them all down now. You're done carrying. The hod is down, the tray is down, the shears are down, the sledge is down. You're warm enough, and still enough, and safe enough. Warm enough, still enough, safe enough. And you have a roof and a bed and a door that locks, which is more than the boy in the footing trench had, and it is enough. It's enough. Tomorrow there will be errands and noise and the ordinary freight of your own century. Tomorrow the city, yours, whichever it is, will go on wearing its dead lightly and building its scaffolding for what comes next. But that's tomorrow. Tomorrow will come soon enough. For now there's just this. The dark room, the slow breath, the day set down. So let it come. Let sleep take you the way night took that house at the end of every ball, floor by floor, lamp by lamp, the doors going quiet, the last footsteps climbing away up the back stair. Let the avenue fade. Let the crystal go dark. Let your thoughts slow and settle and come to rest, the way dust settles in a shut room, softly, evenly, over everything, until the edges are gone. The watchman has made his round, the shutters are tried, the key has turned, 1, 2, and the deep-oiled clunk of it is the last sound of the night, and everything worth keeping is inside. You've earned this rest. Take it, and dream if you can of a girl on a marble staircase, counting her way up into the dark. 49, 50, 51, 52, and the number coming out the same, and the world holding. Good night.